I know, mixing is fun, but it shouldn't take you 3 days to get to a result you are kind of happy with. Back in the day, I struggled to get mixes done quickly and get a consistent good sound every single mix I did. I used to just open an empty Pro Tools project, throw in my files, start mixing and build from there. But that takes a lot of time every single mix you do, and you might not even have to actually do it that way. I quickly learned that the pros I was looking up to used mixing templates, with their routing already set up, with their parallel processing and their effects on their auxiliaries already, and even with plugins preset, ready to be engaged with one click of a button whenever they needed them. And I gotta say, as soon as I got my mixing templates set up the way I wanted to, my mixes were done quicker, they sounded better, and mixing was more fun in general. But what exactly does a pro mixing template look like? Well, that's what we are going to find out in today's video. Let's go. Okay, if you open up Pro Tools over here and you create a new session, you can click Create from Template. That brings you to the entire list of templates, which are 1,000,000 for me. But I need this 040425, which is my most recent updated mixing templates. My files are going to be in 48 kilohertz, and even though the files I'm going to be using for this project are 24-bit, I want to be in 32-bit float for the project. Okay, as you can see, the template has been loaded up. From bottom to the top, I've got the master, then I've got the print tracks, the Premaster. I'll get back to that later why I'm separating those two. I've got a Premaster fader, a VCA for all the audio tracks. I've got 2 folders for my vocals, splitting them over backing vocals and lead vocals. I've got a music folder for all the music stuff. Then I've got a drums folder. I've got a bunch of auxiliaries with effects here on top, from reverbs to delays to choruses, doublers. All the time-based and pitch-based effects, they're all in this folder. Now you may notice that there are a couple of auxiliaries here in the drum folder, and the same thing happens over here in the lead vocal folder. Those are my parallel processing chains. So for the vocal parallel, that's parallel compression for the vocal, and here we've got parallel drum and bass, drum saturation and drum lock. And I'll get back to that later, because first I need to actually activate those. They are inactive by default, so opening up the template is a little bit quicker, because if it has to load all of these tracks, yeah, you're going to add a couple of minutes to opening up the session. Doing it this way really speeds up the mix prep process, where you don't need those auxiliaries with those effects yet, but you do need to be inside of the Pro Tools session to set everything up for mixing later. Okay, I've imported the files of a track that I've recently mixed called Oid by L. Hollis, and we're going to be using that to show you all the routing options you get in the template, and also to give you some sound examples of certain effects chains and processing chains I have set in this template. So the first thing I want to do is actually send all of these to my Premaster, which is basically my master bus, but it is an auxiliary over here where I can have all my processing set up already, and then I can send it out to the print bus. By doing that, I can print it onto an actual audio track inside of Pro Tools. So every audio file, wherever it is routed through, it will end up on that Premaster. But not everything is going directly to the Premaster, because we have a couple of folders. We've got the backing vocal, the lead vocal folder, we've got the music folder, and we've got the drums folder. So I'm going to pick out all the drums. So I've got kick, hi-hat, crash, and I'm sending those to the drums folder. Now by dropping them in that folder, it doesn't by default set their outputs to that drums bus. This is Pro Tools, so that kind of stuff you need to do yourself. Now the next thing I want to do with those drums is select all the audio files as well as the parallel processing chains. Hit Command G to make a group, call it drums, and then deselect this one, because I don't want the edit group to be there. I don't want that to mess with anything. I just need the control with the VCA over here, which later comes in really handy if for any reason you need to pull up or down all of your drums. And I can hear you say, but you've got a drums folder with a fader on it. And yes, that's true, but that is post-processing, and sometimes I want a little bit of control before I'm doing all the processing. So this is a pre-processing fader before it goes through all these plugins, and this is a post-processing fader after it has gone through all the plugins. Another benefit that gives me is on the bass, for example, there's just a VCA, no folder. So I can actually drag all the VCAs and put them on one spot like you would have on an SSL console, for example. In the center section you would have 8 VCAs and they would control groups of faders on the other side of the console, which comes in really handy if you have a 96 channel console and you need to slide from one side to the other. Now I don't have that in my template, but I could say, hey, after this master, I'm going to put all my VCAs and just mix on the VCAs. Okay, so we've got these two bass tracks and they are going over here. So now to create control here, I'm going to make a bass group, bypass the group, and then hit bass. And I've got this VCA control over both of those tracks. And then by doing that, I've got one fader to rule them all. Sorry, I'm a tiny bit of a Lord of the Rings fan, so there will be more Lord of the Rings references in future content, maybe even this video. Also, because I don't have a bass folder, these bass tracks are going directly to the Premaster. Sometimes they end up in my drums bus, or I create a new drums and bass folder, but by default they go directly to the Premaster. And then here on the bottom we still have the rest of all the music tracks. So they are going to the music folder, then I'm going to hold Option and Shift again, and I'm going to send all of them to the music folder. Over here you notice that in the music folder I've got more than one VCA. I divide it up into synths, guitars and samples, and if there's more that I need to control, I'll just make new VCAs. So I've got piano layers, real piano, solo piano, that is it. That will go to synths. I know they're not synths, but hey. Now the VCA method also comes in really handy if you're bouncing stems. So I always try to figure out what kind of stems they might want later on. So I can just solo the synth VCA, and everything that is not affiliated with synths is being muted, and I can just bounce that out and have super easy and quick stems. Okay, I've loaded up the vocals, so let's see what needs to go where. We've got one lead vocal, lead, that goes there. The rest is all harmonies and dubs, so those can go to the backing vocal folder. And then we've got backing vocals for these, so let's route them there. And then we've got the reverb and the lead vocal over here, and they can go to lead. And then I've got the lead Vox VCA, which I already have a group for, so let's go to modified groups, and then let's find Vox parallel, reverb, and wet lead vocal. Add it to lead, and then we should have control over all three of them. And then let's do the same with the backing vocal. So I've selected all of them, Command G, BGVs, turn it off immediately, but we do have no control because no group. Backing vocals, yes. And then over here I've got all Vox VCA, all vocals VCA, and that just turns up and down all the vocals because this fader controls the lead vocals VCA and the backing vocals VCA, so I can just turn all of the vocals down and up with that one fader. And then I've got one more VCA, that's the all VCA, and now I know it's a little bit confusing because it's not controlling all the other VCAs, it's controlling all the audio tracks levels. So this process that I'm doing right now in selecting every single audio file is something you could best do when you load up the files. I forgot, so now I have to do this manually one by one, but otherwise you could just select them all, hit Command G, and then go all empty for multi-tracks. So then when I hit all empty over here and I take that out, then we can control all of the audio tracks with this. So this comes in really handy when I want to take all of the faders and level them up a little bit to get a little bit more level in my Premaster, or do the opposite when I'm clipping the Premaster or not leaving enough headroom. I can take this down. The only thing is you're taking down the audio files, so in the bus processing you're also taking the level down. So if you had your compression set on your buses, yeah, then you need to dial it in again and saturation is going to be different. So I try to use this as a last resort. What I'd rather use is my Premaster fader, and that controls the Premaster bus. So the bus that everything is routed to, that goes to the Premaster auxiliary over here. So by taking this up and down, it is actually a fader before it goes into the Premaster. So if we look at that Premaster fader over here, it's actually a pre-processing fader to all the processing that's happening on the Premaster. So I can take the level down before it hits all of that compression, EQ, saturation and everything, or I can take the level down afterwards, which again gives me a lot of control, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. And then after the signal is processed through all the plugins on the Premaster, it goes to the print bus over here. So that's a pre-fader auxiliary, so I can mute this over here, and then it gets printed onto this track. Then I grab my last couple of mastering plugins, so the Golfos and the standard clip and the limiter, and I paste those onto that print bus. And then the output of that print bus goes to the limiter bus, which ends up on the limiter track over here. And by doing that, I can print a print without all the clippers and limiters to go to mastering. And at the same time, I can print the mastered version with my limiter and clipper and everything for the artist to listen to and have that level matched experience with the rest of the tracks that they're going to reference it to. And that is also exactly why on my master bus, where it goes after this, I have the adapter metric AB. So here I can load up to 16 reference tracks and an AB with all of them and check stereo image, spectrum, loudness, everything I need to know about that. Then I've got snapshot over here where I can load up all my images if I'm using outboard gear, which is really handy. I've got BX solo over here, so I can swap the left and the right to hear if there's nothing weird going on with my room acoustics, with my ears, with my speakers, and I can just check if the balance is correct when I switch it over from left to right. Then I've got listen to by Audio Movers. This plugin can send over my audio from the master bus in high quality to wherever you are in the world. So that is really useful for if I'm working with clients overseas and they just want to hop on a Zoom call and knock out a revision, but they can't physically be in the same room as me. Then I've got my friend Mix2Mobile over here, which sends the output of the mix to my phone over here, so I can actually listen how it sounds on my phone speaker. And then the last plugin on my master is the project time, so I actually know how much time I'm spending on a project. This comes in really handy if you want to know how long you spent on a mix. It's also a bit depressing sometimes because you figure out it was way longer than you thought. It's also nice if you want to know what you should be charging for your mix to have this running, and then you go, oh, okay, this mix took me 6 hours, or this mix took me 12 hours, or whatever, and then you can go, okay, that's like a 1 hourly rate of so-and-so, so I need to be charging X amount of money. If you want to start using this very mixing template to level up your mixing game, you can. Because if you go to my website over here on my services, you'll see my services like mix feedback, stem mastering, one-on-one sessions, but you'll also be able to buy this mixing template. Now, it is on sale right now for $14.99, and I think that is an absolute steal. But before you do that, there's also another option. If you hit the join button under any of my videos, you'll be able to see the Virtual Internship. As a member of the Virtual Internship, you'll gain access to the video in which I go through all my processing on this template. So all the stuff on my Premaster, on all the folders, everything that's on my auxiliaries over here. On top of that, you'll gain access to hours and hours of recording, mixing, and general studio content. You'll be able to join an exclusive WhatsApp group with all the virtual interns, my team members, and of course myself. And on top of that, I'm throwing in this mixing template for free if you join. So hit the join button down below and go check that out. And I'll see you on the next video. Later!